On April 17th, Columbia students established the first Gaza solidarity encampment. They set up tents on campus and demanded divestment from companies and institutions that profit from the Zionist entity, in addition to an academic boycott of Israeli universities and an end to policing on campus. The camp was smashed by the NYPD the day after it was erected, thanks to a cartel of billionaire bosses pressuring the mayor of New York. But instead of quelling dissent, the brutal police attack escalated it and multiplied it across 140 U.S. campuses. And
actually, this is true. This is true, what he's saying here. So the reason that the college encampments got so out of proportion last year in 2024 was entirely because the NYPD was brought onto campus. This is the cardinal mistake that Columbia made last year that took what was a relatively small protest of like socialists and communists on their campus and it blew it out of proportion. So why did bringing the NYPD onto campus at Columbia in 2014 have that effect? Well, there is nothing that socialists and communists hate more than the police. Abolish the police. Defund the police. Their thing against ICE is exactly their same thing against the police. So every time they're complaining about ICE, they say exactly the same thing about the police. Columbia had last year a relatively small group of students that like they set up tents on the lawn, but they actually weren't really doing much of anything. And then Columbia made the boneheaded decision to call the NYPD on these students to get them to take down their tents. This was the first time that the NYPD had been onto Columbia's campus since 1968 because Columbia is extremely leftist, they're extremely socialist, they're extremely communist, and they don't like the police. And so they literally had the police banned from campus. So when they brought the police onto campus last year, what they did is they pissed off all the students, and people who weren't already involved in the protests were like, oh, motherfucker. And so that was the biggest mistake that Columbia made because the next day after they called the police, the encampment quadrupled in size. So the reason that the thing got large enough to where they took over a building is because they made the colossal mistake of calling the police in the first place. They should have handled it a different way. I'm not saying they shouldn't have handled it. I'm saying they should have handled it in a different way. And had they understood how much these leftist students hate the police, then they wouldn't have done that because that was the thing that set it all off. Was it a deliberate move? No, because the administration at Columbia is stupid. The administrators are stupid. That's why they did it.